Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Galahad, and welcome to our first ever DC Legends show, DC Bizarro Style. I'm joined by Bizarro, my co-host. and,
Goodbye.
yeah, there he is. Introduce yourself, Bizarro.
Hello, guys. This is Bizarro.
Fantastic. So our topic for today is red alerts and how you can use different strategies for red alerts. And basically the characters that you can use and everything. We are going to be touching up upon everything. So Bizarro, why don't you kick things off on red alerts?
Appreciate it, Galahad. So we wanted to do this because I know this is one of the things that newer players struggle with when they come into the game. And I remember my own struggles with it. And we couldn't find any kind of red alert video that gave strategy. So Galahad and I thought we would put this together as a way to help some of the newer players.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've thought about that myself too, because I was searching on YouTube and I could not find, for the love of me, any video that could help me out with red alerts when I started, and it was a big struggle for me. So hopefully today, after today's video is done, you guys will exactly know what characters you need for red alerts, their power levels, what type of gear you're stuck at, whether it be gear 10 or gear 11, and eventually how you can put all these strategies together, all their abilities and everything, to help you maximize the way you do red alerts and hopefully finish them if you've been struggling with that. So let's talk about a brief overview of red alerts. The first thing that we need to do is explain what red alerts are. It's basically the tab that you go into in game where you have all these different missions. You can complete them, you get rewards, you get fragments of characters, gold, and a lot of cool stuff. Let's talk about team selection, and let's go ahead from there. So Bizarro, what would you suggest about selecting your team?
So the first thing that I would say about selecting your team is really paying attention to your roster, and more specifically balance in your roster. And what I mean by balance is that you don't want to have a bunch of tunes in your list that are really high level. And by level, your power is determined by that score underneath your tune. Usually you're talking about a range from 4 to 6,000 if you're getting into gear 9, gear 10 range. And what you want to make sure is that your top 4 tunes are balanced, because the way the computer determines the opponents that you're going to get is by looking at those top 4 tunes and their total score together. So if you have 1 or 2 that are really overpowered as opposed to the rest of your roster, and you lose those 2, then you're not going to do well the rest of the red alerts because of that imbalance in your roster. So paying attention to your top 4 characters and keeping balance in your roster is really important.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed as well. Your top 4 or top 5, I usually like to go overkill with everything, so for me it's top 5, but honestly it's usually top 4. Your top 4 characters are the main people who you need to keep in check, and basically the rest of your characters need to be in line with them so that the AI doesn't give you super hard teams. Second thing we need to talk about is basically whether you are gear 10 or gear 11. So what do you have to say about that, Bizarro?
Well, one other point before I address that, one other point I would make too is the way I tried to balance my roster was working around affinity. So I would make sure I had 2 of, say, of each affinity balanced around the same power. Then I'd work up to 3 around each affinity around the same power, and then 4. That way, if I lost a tune, I had a backup to keep going, because with 12 consecutive missions that you're working through, it can be quite challenging. So making sure you think about affinity and balance in affinity too is really important.
Oh yeah, affinity is really important. Go ahead, Bizarro.
So in relation to your question about gear, I think staying at a consistent gear across your characters is really important. Gear 9, gear 10 is what I would probably recommend for newer players. Until you're ready to take that gear 11 step, because Gear 11 requires a lot of resources. And I kind of learned that a hard way when I had upgraded my Superman to Gear 11. So if you're not willing to take that step yet, I recommend Gear 9 or Gear 10 for people trying to do red alerts and keeping your roster balanced around Gear 9, Gear 10.
Right, yeah, that's a very valid point because I made the same mistake of leveling up my top 4 tunes. I think this was a while back, I think 6 months ago, to Gear 11, and the rest of my roster was all Gear 10, level 60, and I had a huge disparity between them, and the thing was that I was getting these teams, these crazy teams. I could not finish my red alerts. But yeah, eventually, like, I got a whole bunch of other tunes to Gear 11, so that fixed my issue, but that's very important. And so let's talk now about what teams we use for red alerts. So I know my team, because I don't have Red Robin. I mean, I do have him, but he's not even Legendary 1, so pretty useless for me. I use basically Hal Jordan lead most of the time. Power Girl is my main taunter, and Black Adam is my main mystic character for damage, and I use another red damage character. So that's my main team. I believe it was Castaway Green Arrow. Yeah. So my main team is Hal Jordan, Castaway Green Arrow, Power Girl, and Black Adam. What about you, Bizarro?
Well, I was curious, why did you choose to go with Hal Jordan?
Well, that's because he's the best green I have right now.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And I always say I think Castaway Green Arrow is a great addition to your team because the turn meter manipulation that he gives to his team and that he does himself is a really nice way to overcome some of the struggles you can occur when battling RNG with the computer.
True.
Myself, I like to use a team that gets me through red alerts really fast. It's the team you're probably going to see in the background playing while we're doing this video. And that's the team that Deadshot lead with Red Robin, Black Adam, and Larfleeze. And part of the reason I like to use them, which I think leads into a little bit of discussion about selecting your team, is sort of what carries over from battle to battle. And I think the reason I like the Larfleeze, Black Adam, Deadshot, Hired Gun, and Red Robin team is that they're really good when it comes to turn meter. So with Deadshot, if you kill somebody on your basic, you're getting 100% turn meter if you have the legendary ability. Upon deaths of enemies, Larfleeze and Black Adam will gain turn meter. And I sort of think Red Robin in a way is getting extra turn meter in that he can go out of turn on his basic if you have the legendary for him to take, I believe it's 25% chance or 50% chance for him to use his basic between turns. So I feel like that turn meter up is really important, which is why I select that team.
It's, yeah, definitely. It's a very deadly team, I would say. And if I had all the characters, Gear 11, at least L3 or L4, I would definitely be using that team. Speaking of which, I do have Deadshot Hired Gun, because right now, this episode, in today's episode, we're talking only about specifically the team that you use. Me, I use a variety of different teams because I don't use a lot of characters that have turn meter manipulation for red alerts. Or I don't have them geared, I should say. If I did have them geared, I would use them. But for me, it's like a lot of different teams. That's why I have like, I use Deadshot, I use Bane as well, and a lot of these other characters too. Let's talk about what carries over, by the way, to the next battle.
Well, and I would say your point is a really good one too, because a lot of newer players aren't going to have some of the characters that I mentioned. Larfleeze is not readily available. Black Adam, you can't really farm until you've beat the campaign mode. So I think your point is a really good one. But thinking about like what carries over, we were talking about turn meter, and I think we'll talk about what else carries over. But the basic point is for newer players to pay attention to which tunes they have that might get turn meter up, because it does carry forward from battle to battle in red alerts. The other things that carry over are overheal and shield. So, like your use of Hal Jordan, I think is a really good one because you can really build up that shield from match to match going forward in Red Alert.
Yeah, his shield is what I rely on most, honestly, even more than his stun and him purging buffs. And when paired with Black Adam, they just purge buffs like crazy, and Castaway Green Arrow. So any team that is buff heavy, I don't have a problem facing because of Hal's Hammer, because of Black Adam, and basically because of Castaway Green Arrow. So yeah, these are the things that do carry over. Buffs, however, they don't carry over. So if you have a lot of tunes that buff up, say like Cyborg, or especially since you're a new player, he's going to be one of your main greens, Cyborg. But his buffs, they don't carry over, unfortunately. Let's talk about healers. Healers is another topic. Go ahead, Bizarro, take this one away.
So I think healers are probably something that you're going to want to use when you're starting out. So most everybody's going to have Zatanna. And having a healer on your team and making sure you protect that healer can be a good way to make sure you make more progress in red alerts. Because, you know, when you're starting out, it's much easier for your tunes to take damage, harder to protect them. You may not have a taunter, but you want to make sure you have somebody who can get your energy back up, because although you receive a small heal between each red alerts battle, it is not a significant heal. So having a healer on there can really benefit you.
Oh yeah, that's very beneficial. Zatanna is one of the key healers that you need to have in the beginning. And what I wanted to touch upon was like selecting your first team fight, like how their power level doesn't really matter. What's important is the affinity. You need to have characters that are basically of a affinity advantage, we call them in DC Legends. So an affinity advantage is basically when, say for example, a blue takes out a green colored character. So a blue is mystic, green is energy, and a red, I believe, is physical. So these work kind of like a rock paper scissors type of thing, where like a red beats blue, blue beats green, and green beats red. So you need to make sure that your characters have a positive affinity in the first few battles. What do you think about that, Bizarro?
I agree. Because I'm lucky enough to have Black Adam, I tend, and he's very powerful, I tend to seek out teams with more greens because I know Black Adam can really do some serious damage against the energy characters. And I think that selection of that first team is really critical of how you're going to do going forward. So I think, Galahad, your strategy is exactly right. And the other thing I would say is, when you're selecting your first fight, check all battles, because the mistake I made as an early player was thinking I had to go in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 12. But you can choose any available battle there. You don't have to do them in order. So look at the one that is most favorable to you, and really, like Galahad said, consider affinity as you're doing that.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, Bizarro. What I used to do is like, when I was brand new, I used to like not know what tunes are like the one-shot tunes. Like, say for example, now we have Power Girl, right? But back in the day, it was Deathstroke, if you remember. And
Yes.
you kill somebody else, and then he would like take out your entire team. So that's very important. Hitting on the same point that Bizarro made, you can choose any team. So stay away from Power Girl teams as much as you can.
Yeah, there's certain characters I think you just want to avoid. As when I'm selecting teams that I want to fight, I tend to look for older characters that haven't been reworked yet, like Yellow Lantern Sinestro, or Cyborg, Zatanna, Batman Cape Crusader. Those tend to be characters that are a little easier to take down. But I wanted to return to something you said, Galahad, which was the ability to one-shot somebody. And I think that's where Deadshot Hired Gun is really valuable, is that ability to have your first turn be a critical hit is really valuable. And he is somewhat easy to farm because he's in the Alliance shop, I believe, or the PvP shop. I'm not sure which.
Correct. Yeah.
And you can also get him in red alert, so it becomes, you build momentum that way.
Yeah, and just because I'm kind of tired today, I mentioned Power Girl. What I meant to say was Wonder Girl. Stay away from Wonder Girl teams, not Power Girl. Power Girl you can take out easily if you have the proper tunes. But what I meant to say was Wonder Girl. Sorry.
Well, I actually agree with you. I actually tend to avoid Power Girl myself because if you can't purge that taunt right at the beginning, she's just going to be building up turn meter. She's going to be building up a lot of strength ups. And before you know it, even if you're going toe to toe with your own Power Girl, I've noticed that the computer always seems to have an advantage with its Power Girl over yours. So that's actually one character I do tend to avoid.
That's true. Yeah.
I also avoid characters like Donna Troy, Harley Quinn, Mad Jester, especially when she's paired with Batgirl. That's considered a meta team right now, and if I know it's a meta team, meta meaning it's considered one of the most powerful teams out there right now, I will avoid that too. And in fact, I try to avoid taunters altogether.
I agree. I try to avoid taunters too. All right, now that we've gotten through that section, let's talk about basically what you should do now that we've basically covered everything that we had to cover today. So let's talk about how, like, what characters should you farm basically early on as a new player. I'd say Hal Jordan is really good. He's one of the best greens in the game right now. You can't go wrong with him. Like Bizarro mentioned, Zatanna, an early healer, is good. Deadshot is really good. And who else am I missing? Bizarro?
I would say Emerald Archer, Green Arrow with the agility downs that really weakens the defense of the computers team. I think that's really helpful too. We actually used Green Arrow, Emerald Archer some in the raid because of that, because of the ability to bring defense down. And what that means is essentially is your characters will do more damage per shot because their defense rating is lower.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I think that covers it for today. So have anything to add, Bizarro, or any other special thing you need to say?
One thing I would say is enjoy red alerts while you can, because although they can be frustrating that you can't get through all 12, I'm sort of at the point where I can beat them very easily, and it takes away from the game a little bit in the sense that it's not challenging anymore. So I would say really enjoy it while you can, because I really miss that challenge. And although that challenge could be frustrating, it really was fun. So enjoy it while you can.
Agreed. Enjoy it while you can, and also the rewards in there honestly are worth it still. Even if you're like a pay-to-play player, which you won't be starting out, you're going to be a free-to-play player mostly, I'm assuming. But yeah, Bizarro's right. Enjoy it while you can. And yeah, I think that would be all for today's episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for sticking through the video if you did. And remember to subscribe to the Bizarro channel. And I'll have my channel in the description down below as well if you want to check out some DC Legends content there, as I'm losing my voice. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.